What's good, YouTube? And welcome to the house. Today I wanted to talk about something that's synonymous with the Yu-Gi-Oh community, and that's buyout culture. Be it the meta buyouts, the collector buyouts, there's so many different things with Yu-Gi-Oh in particular that it's become a common day occurrence. I have a whole segment called Market Watch on it, and I wanted to do this also unedited, not to just word vomit up on you and take my time thinking, but I've noticed at the beginning of my live streams, people tend to like these discussions I put forward, so I wanted to try this more in a one-on-one video format with you, the viewer. So I want to start with meta buyouts and where people go really wrong with these, and also where they sometimes succeed either by a happy accident or because the meta doubles down and this card is so needed. So let's say you have a nice little shiny meta card here and you think it's underpriced. Let's use Link Ross as an example. Maybe you think it's not going to get hit on the next list. You think the Synchro Engine is going to see a huge resurgence, take over the meta, and Konami's not going to hit it or whatever. You have a 500 IQ big brain buyout idea, and you're going to buy it out. It's like $22, $23 right now to the $35 price point. You're going to make it disappear from the entire market. Well, first off, you're overpaying. Whenever something starts to go off the market, if you stop at a certain price point, people either panic and they go after the rest of the card, or they disagree with you and they don't buy it. So forcing it all the way into that price point, if you truly believe in this card, is just a terrible practice in the first place, because you're either overpaying on what you're to take to get in over time just to make that zero appear on the screen, the no listing appear on the screen on a relatively newer card that's going to relist itself. So people tend to do this with card after card, and that's why we see the buyout happen, and then in just 2 weeks it's barely above the price it was at. And the reason why it's barely above that price is, well, you finally got your cards in, yet oh, that seller had backstock. That seller had backstock. All these sellers had backstock. They didn't list their full listing. What do you mean they still had extra copies? They opened a ton of these products in the past, and they have stacks, or maybe people made the same call as you, yet they were getting it in over time. They were paying the minimal market amount over and over and over, yet you were the sucker who ended up buying everything off the market. I feel like this is a common first mistake in modern Yu-Gi-Oh meta investing that people try to make. They try to force that move instead of just slowly taking in copies over time and being safer with it with a better price point, and then they get punished for it. You are going to wait your whole week to 2 weeks for sellers to finally fill out those orders, ship them on over for you to get them in, for you to condition check, make sure you got everything in, and then finally list it and hope to make your own sales. In the meantime, the new listings have started to undercut each other, and now you're looking at barely getting your money back after fees and shipping if the price happened to maintain above. And in the worst case scenario, it just went back to the price that you tried to buy it out at. And that's why you see second and third and fourth waves of buyouts on certain products that people try to continue on. Now, this is where the vintage market doesn't have a leg up on the meta market. That's the fact that whenever a buyout happens, there's less and less willing sellers on these cards. They see the new price point, they go, well, I predicted this card would go to the moon, and while it's at the moon, now I'm starting to think it'll go to Mars or Venus. I'm not going to relist mine. So these buyouts in this market, they can have the most sane people with money ready at the hand, and they just can't get the item they're looking for as much. So people now have to start to overpay to even get a couple of these, and let alone try to make the graded ones disappear or whatever cash would be put into that. It's monumental. It's insane amounts of money at this point. But when you're starting to look at other card games, Yu-Gi-Oh still seems relatively cheap versus, say, Pokemon, or you look over at Magic, the Black Lotus, the Charizard. Our Blue Eyes, for relatively a lot of different versions, is still somewhat cheap for many different nice ones. Retro Pack, 1500. I remember just 5 or 6 years ago when all of Retro Pack 1, an entire complete set, was 1500. So to the people who've been following, yes, that seems insane. But to the person going, wow, all these different versions of Charizard, and there's a near mint copy of this at 1500, I think I'll go ahead and grab it. Like, looking from the outside in, Yu-Gi-Oh's cheap despite having doubled and tripled up since just February on a ton of the collector's market. We're seeing record numbers, yet outside eyes looking in, they see small numbers that they think could rise a lot, and they're not wrong. Look at DDS Blue Eyes. Just recently, the gem mint tins for those were $3,000, and that was insane. And now they're selling for $5,000 off of core. They're selling for $8,000. They are just going up exponentially. And the first edition Blue Eyes, which people were like, yeah, that art's not as nice. Well, you come from the outside looking in, first edition base set is just known to be smart. They're buying up the first edition Blue Eyes, and it's now past the DDS Blue Eyes on the graded market, despite the history within the game and our tendencies towards, as Yu-Gi-Oh players, towards that specific card. So there's different kinds of reasons where you can hit it lucky depending on what you went in on. I've always liked to pick out a bulk first edition PSV, MRL, MRD, LOB, and set it aside. But you also have commons like Tournament Pack and Champion Pack that I would set aside too. Those have gone to the stratosphere considering Tournament Pack 1 and 2, they're just so crazy high, and that's the moment a lot of people got into Yu-Gi-Oh! That's the moment they remember their connections to Yu-Gi-Oh! Chasing after a morphing jar. They were in because of the anime, and that's kind of the area where people got in, and then they went and did other things. They went and played Smash Brothers, they went to college, they went somewhere else, and if they're trying to recapture a bit of their childhood, they're looking into those areas. Now, there's also Ultimate Rares, one of the most unique rarities in Yu-Gi-Oh! And it has an artificial scarcity created by Konami themselves. Used to, they were everywhere in core sets. You were getting one per box, and you were seeing so many of them, and you still had a lot of different cards that could be Ultimate Rare within the sets themselves. So getting specific Ultimate Rares wasn't the easiest thing per case of cards, and of course, they've gotten playware over time. People didn't keep them the nicest. Later on, we see Ultimate Rares even become 10 promos for a little bit with the Gaga cards, and that's when Konami knew they needed to tighten them up. They took them out of core sets, and later on, they end up being only tournament packs. The thing that has exponential value that's older, and now that market's doing very well for itself. When you see the buyouts on these tournament pack cards, they're not able to reset themselves on the market in terms of mass quantity, just like vintage cards. Early on they can, but after the second buyout, after the third buyout, what's Darklaw on its 12th buyout? Whenever you see that level of buyouts, they're not going to come back as easily. People that got them, they got them to keep them because it kept going up. They got them because they don't want to have to go hunt another one down, the true collectors. And now you get into vendor hot potato where somebody's buying it just to resell it when it hits X price. But when it hits X price, they're starting to reconsider. They're like, that was quicker than I expected. I might want to go ahead and hold on to it. So again, there's this scarcity on market that even though there's a ton of sellers ready to sell at certain prices, sometimes they hold off. When it comes to collectibles, it's just a different restock game than the meta market. The meta market, you'll see cards crash, you'll see them spike, you'll see them go everywhere, but it's a pretty consistent rise after buyouts throughout this entire year on the collector market. Now, will events coming back affect the collector market negatively? I don't necessarily think so. Right now, the online marketplace is choked horrendously. It's the only place we have to buy cards. In-person events aren't there. The YCSs are Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship Series, where you're able to go in that room and trade cards, buy cards, go up to vendors' booths, millions of dollars of cards exchange hands in that room. We don't have that right now. So the online marketplace is where it's largely choked, and it's overexerted itself throughout these last half of a year, this last half of a year. But seriously, that's what's been happening. So you have sellers who probably are just throwing it in the back room, waiting for an event, or that's how they're going to deal it. And that's how you get these gems of deals that pop up, mom and pop stores, all other kinds of places that don't necessarily adapt to online. Although at this point, you really should adapt to online, or you're kind of dead, and the water is a brick and mortar. Those places still exist, though. I remember that guy that would come to events with an orange bucket, Home Depot bucket, first edition packs that were less desirable, Ancient Sanctuary, Cyberdark Impact, that now people would clamor for, even loose at the price of $1 a pack he was throwing them out at. And those sets definitely aged better over time in terms of estimated value pool. I digress. My point is, those shops do exist. Those unicorns that you could find the better deals on, they happen to be out there. When it comes to this market, though, it's all online. it's overexerted itself, and that's where we're at. So, what do you guys think of Yu-Gi-Oh! Buyout culture? I definitely think there's different waves of it. The content creators, myself included, have caused buyouts. I'll be like, I think you should get this card sooner than later, and here's why. And people don't just pull out their wallet the moment that happens. They tend to think, okay, reasoning behind this. Does it sound palatable? Does it sound good? It's not always reach for the wallet, hit that TCG player link in the description down below, costing you nothing extra to support the channel directly for the cards you'd already be buying. It's, well, do I need this? Will it make me money? Is the word good? Like, let me reason this. And I think a lot of the Yu-Gi-Oh! YouTube community, luckily for a lot of content creators, thinks with their own 500 table 500 IQ mega brain before actually reaching and swiping that credit card. But there's still people out there who would take pretty much any word. Then I try to get you guys to think outside that box. Always check both. Look over eBay, shop over here, look over there. Make sure you're always getting the best deal for you and taking care of yourself. Thanks for watching. This has been an episode, I suppose, of Word Vomit. We'll see how it goes. Yu-Gi-Oh! Buyout culture is definitely something I think that we could take more deep dives into. And I enjoy these kind of not as focused, but look around the market talks. I really do.